Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at carolthecoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I am married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself? I got an interesting email this week. He says, Thank
you for being so available to me. And I just want to know how I can contact you if I need special guidance. Well, if you're in the Indianapolis area, you can contact me via my phone number, or it's always okay to email me at carolthecoach.com. And if you're from another state, another country, more than likely we can Zoom so that I can consult with you. You know, some states don't let you do mental health therapy. So I always have to explore that, but I am available to consult. I'm a coach. I can consult. There are no stipulations on that. I do make sure it's HIPAA compliant. I use Zoom, but I'd be more than happy to help you with your issues. Obviously, I'm here every Monday night. You know, Monday is my long day. I start at 8. I typically go straight through. I have a group for sex addicts at 5 o'clock, and I get done about 6:30, 6:45. Get home, have a couple of hours to kind of relax, and then I'm back at it with the show. And I know most of you don't listen to me on Monday night, but you do listen throughout the week, and I am so grateful for that. I also want to tell you about my YouTube channel. It is Sex Help with Carol the Coach. It is for addicts and partners. And if you're a clinician, it's a great way to get some bullet points that you can then share with your clients. You know, one of the things that I think I'm really good at, I've done radio and television for a long time, is that I give explanations, but I give the bullet points. If you need more information, you can Google that. You can talk to me. You can find out what book I got that from. You can figure out why I surmised a certain formula. But I really do give you things that you can remember after watching a video. For instance, tonight I just taped a YouTube segment on taking good care of yourself. What is self-care? Whether you're an addict or a partner, you got to take good care of yourself. And that means you have to look at your 6 basic needs. And they are your social, your intellectual, your physical, your emotional, your spiritual, and your purposeful. Now, I know if you're a sex addict, you're probably going, hey, where is my sexual? Well, your sexual is tied up in your emotional. It may be also tied up a little bit in your physical. But your sexual needs are a part of something bigger and greater. And it may have been that when you first developed as a young boy or as a young girl, at ages 5, 6, 7, or 8, you ended up seeing something, whether that was via the internet, whether that was a magazine, whether that was a video, that created curiosity. It may have created that feeling of being actually in some sort of risque, taboo-like situation. You know, that in and of itself can be very compelling. And regardless, you may have seen something that your brain kind of locked into. And then you felt the need to look further. And definitely the internet has provided you all sorts of opportunities growing up to check things out. Now, if you're a 60-year-old man, you didn't have the internet till about 1998. But if you're 32, well, you know, it's 2016, so you've had 18 years of the internet. And that is enough to have created some real habit disorders, some real compulsivity. And if you have what we call a dual diagnosis, maybe you have some anxiety, maybe you have some obsessive-compulsive disorder, maybe you have bipolar depression, or you have attention deficit, and impulses are very hard to control. Those kind of disorders set you up for this problem. So I'm here to help get you on the right track and make a difference in your life. So when you look at those 6 needs, and again, they're emotional, physical, intellectual, social, spiritual, and purposeful, you got to decide how can you get those met in healthy ways. And when you do that, you're practicing good self-care. Now, for all the guys and women out there that are addicts, I want you to take care of yourself, and I want you to pay attention to those needs. However, 51% of the time, in other words, over half of the time, I want you to pay more attention to the person that you betrayed. And that is because you owe them that. You have rocked their world. You have created an illusion. You've betrayed them. You have a double life. And if you really want to get honest and you really want to develop intimacy and you want to develop trust, you're going to have to give them over 50% of your attention. And if you don't think you can do that, and I could see why you might not be able to. I mean, a lot of people with sexual addiction have intimacy disorders, so that's a real challenge. Then you've got to get yourself to a CSAT. And a CSAT stands for Certified Sexual Addictions Therapist. And you go to sexhelp.com and you put in your zip code, and that will bring up the closest CSAT. And if you're from another country listening to the show, you just put in your country, and it will identify who's available to you. I highly recommend that you don't put that off, because this issue requires specialized help. You can't do it on your own, and you need a guide. Now, I always recommend sponsors in 12-step programs to be the guide for 12-step. But in therapy, it has to be a CSAT or an APSATS. You may wonder, hey, what is an APSATS? Well, an APSATS is a certified clinical partner specialist who works specifically with the trauma that a partner experiences when they've discovered that their wife or husband is a sex addict. I happen to do both, so I really believe in both of them. And that means that you go to APSATS, and that's APSATS.com, and look up somebody in your area. I promote, first and foremost, face-to-face. But if you're a young mom and you can't get away, or if you live in a city that doesn't have somebody close, you may have to use a recovery coach. You may have to use a therapist that can Zoom, that can Skype, that can work with you capacity that you're available. You know, I'm not saying that we need to make it convenient, but definitely we don't want you driving 150 miles to see your therapist. So I highly recommend that you spend some time taking care of those needs. And the emotional needs include seeing somebody who's a specialist in this field. And go to my website, sexhelpwithcarolthecoach.com, and get on my YouTubes and, you know, see the shows that I've done and subscribe to this radio show through iTunes or through my website. I am here to educate you about what you can do to get healthy, to find hope, to find strength, and to find recovery. That is what I do. Now, tonight, I got to tell you, I'm going to be interviewing a man that I met at Hayhouse Motivational Seminars. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hayhouse, but it is a publishing company, actually, that typically publishes motivational books. And Johnnie Callloway, Dragons to Butterflies, The Metamorphosis of a Man. And this book was riveting. You know, obviously, I looked at the cover and I thought, wow, Dragons to Butterflies. That sounds like the addicts I work with. And then I found out that Johnnie had actually thought he had killed his mother at age 5, and he grew up with an angry, alcoholic, sexually confused father. And that, in and of itself, created the need to medicate his feelings. And I think all my sex addicts can appreciate this because, obviously, it matters not whether you're a sex addict, whether you're a drug addict, whether you're an alcoholic. It's all about medicating feelings. And so Johnnie had a drug and an alcohol addiction, and as he says, he had crippling codependency and actually was diagnosed with several mental illnesses. And then he found the spiritual principles of the 12 steps. And he also used something that I highly recommend. I don't talk about it much on this show, but it's called A Course in Miracles. And he was able to forgive, recover, and to heal. And I just really felt like his message was important to all my addicts out there, all their partners, to the clinicians who listen to the show, because his story is true, it's honest, it's authentic, and it is transparent. And so I thought he'd be an inspiration to you tonight, and I was very pleased to meet him. And he's got a lot to share. So as you listen to his story, think about how it applies to your life and what you can do, what you can glean from his life and apply to your own. And I highly recommend that you get this book because it's absolutely amazing. You can like him on Facebook, Dragons to Butterflies page, and he's going to talk to you about how you can email him and contact him. The website is dragonstobutterflies.com. So I want to welcome Johnnie to the show. And, you know, it's been about a month. Johnnie, welcome to Sex Help with Carol the Coach. How are you tonight?
I'm good, Carol. How are you?
I am wonderful. You know, this show is kind of psychoeducational. We talk to people about how to get past their traumas, how to get self-help, and your book was absolutely inspirational. So I just got to ask you, what made you decide to find the courage to actually write this book? Because this is so raw and it is very interpersonal.
Well, that's a good question. Actually, Carol, in 1990, I was told by an astrologist that I was supposed to write a book. And she was so committed to that I paid my $350 for her reading, and she was over in Boca Raton. I was in Sarasota. I came back to Sarasota, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm done with that. But it was an incredible reading, by the way. But about a week later, she called me, and I'm thinking, well, my check didn't bounce. What's she calling me for? And she said, okay, are you writing? And I said, no. She said, well, you're supposed to be writing, and just so you know, it is now my job to make sure you do. And she started calling me like once a week, and next thing I know, I'm moving over to the other coast, going to group therapy with her. She was also a counselor, and she pretty much stuck with me until I wrote the first book, Taming the Dragon. That book did not pan out. I had no idea what I was getting into as far as getting books published in the literary world. So I let it go. I ended up drinking not long after that. And fortunately, my relapse only lasted 6 weeks. But then in January of 2015, February actually, I read a book called The Butterfly Garden by Chip Sinclair. And the whole time I was reading it, I was thinking, man, this guy grew up in my house, because it was not about a butterfly garden. It was about his abuse as a child. And I could identify with every word of it. It took me like 48 hours to read the whole book. And I became determined to meet him. And when I did, he had already read Taming the Dragon, and he said, Johnny, you're an incredible writer, and you've got an incredible story to tell, but you need to tell the real story. 9 weeks later, I had written 2 chapters, and birth had been given to Dragons to Butterflies.
Well, it was meant to be, and you had a lot of encouragement from a lot of people. And, you know, I love the fact that you did it imperfectly. I mean, clearly, the first book didn't bring you the success you thought. You drank, and you are an alcoholic, correct?
Right.
And so,
and a drug addict. I'm an addict. I can be addicted to anything that will disconnect me from the moment.
Exactly. So somehow, after 6 weeks, you pulled it together and you found your purpose.
Well, I pulled it together after. You mean after the relapse?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, actually, what happened is. The last night of my relapse in that 6 weeks, even though I was drunk every day and high every day, every night before I passed out, I was like, God, please get me home soon. I'm not going to make it out here. And the last night of my relapse, I was at this girl's house, and a couple from the local church came by to witness to her to try to get her to straighten up. And that made me feel so small, because that should have been my 12-step call. But then all of a sudden the girl looks at me and she says, oh, my God, you're Johnnie Callloway. And I said, yeah. And then this couple who I don't know at all, they say, he can't be Johnnie Callloway. He's drunk. And I said, yeah, I'm Johnnie Callloway and I'm drunk. Well, what I didn't see is they brought her a copy of that book. And it had my picture on the back.
Oh, my goodness.
And she pointed at my picture and said, no, you're Johnnie Callloway. And I said, I'm tired of people confusing me with that jerk. So I left. I totaled the second car in 3 weeks. About 30 minutes after I left there, I'm going down the road, nose bleeding all over the place, and a lady pulls over at 3 o'clock in the morning to pick me and my buddy up. And as I'm getting in the car, I tell her how brave it was of her to pick up 2 guys she didn't know. And she said, Johnny, I know you. You used to sponsor my husband. And I was done.
Isn't it a small world how God puts, your higher power puts right in front of you a way to get your bearings again?
Yeah. Yeah, so the next day I was done, and I've been sober ever since. Last week I celebrated 25 years.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. So what was it about that experience that helped move you towards absolute sobriety?
I fell in love with the 12 steps at my very first meeting. And what had happened for me as far as my relapse, after the book, I was very disillusioned. After I wrote Taming the Dragon, I was very disappointed. But the big thing that happened was, in the process of writing the book and becoming around the meetings the guy that wrote the book, I got full of what I call 12-step pride and spiritual arrogance, and I was too cool to go back in a meeting and say I need help.
And so
I'm
you
back.
were too cool, and what happened next?
Well, simultaneously, I was living at a spiritual retreat in the Ozark Mountains, and I ended up running into a girl that I had been crazy about as a teenager, but she was too young, and she was my best friend's, one of my friend's sisters, but she was married, and I got with her, and then the guilt of it, I couldn't deal with it. I thought I was next to a priest, and I couldn't deal with the guilt of what I was doing, and I got drunk to deal with the guilt.
Okay. And then what happened?
Well, of course, that didn't pan out. So after that, I'm not one of those people that can drink and get high and go to meetings. So I wasn't going to meetings, but my heart was still connected to the program because, you know, that thing about steps and a belly full of substance, it makes for misery. Well, that was very true because I could not get loaded enough to turn the stuff off, the meetings off that went on in my head. I just could not shut the guys up from the meetings. And that was the worst torment of the whole relapse.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, obviously, you had a lot of trauma as a kid that I believe you were fighting tooth and nail. You know, share a little bit about your childhood. I mean, at age 5, you thought you had killed your mother. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, my mom got cancer, and prior to her being diagnosed, I was her shadow. I went everywhere with my mother. I was the epitome of a mama's boy. And then one day she had to go for a checkup, and I basically begged her to let me go, and she wouldn't let me go, and she promised she'd be right back, and she didn't come home. They discovered how sick she was. They put her in the hospital, and that part of it, that really set me up for a rough childhood because they finally snuck me up to the hospital, up the fire escape to go see her, and she was on death's bed. And I did not want her to be my mom at all. I did not want to believe the woman laying in that bed was the mother that I saw who looked pretty and very healthy when she left the house that day to go to the hospital. And this woman had this big old blister on her lip that actually looked like snot. And she asked me to give her a goodbye kiss, and I said no. And when I got home, I got a spanking. And as my dad was spanking me in one of his drunken fits, he kept shouting at me, "Here your mother lays on her dying bed, and you, her only son, won't even kiss her goodbye." And the next time I saw her, she was in a box. The next thing we did was lower her into the ground, and people started throwing dirt on her. And in my mind, that happened because I didn't kiss her. And in that 5-year-old's mind, I might as well have taken a gun and shot her in the head.
Well, absolutely. That's how kids are, and they always feel responsible for the bad things that happen around them. And so I can understand where you felt totally responsible for that. And then
yes,
your
and
father...
then the result of that was everything that happened in my family, around my family after that, was my fault because I took my mom, I took my sister's mother, I took my dad's wife. I did it all. So my sister showing out and doing the things that she was doing, my dad being angry, that was all on me.
Okay, so how did you deal with that trauma? Because I know that you did not have a healthy upbringing as a child. I mean, your father was an angry alcoholic. You said he was sexually confused. Explain that.
That's That's my attempt to be gentle. I love my dad today. I have totally forgiven my dad. But in the process of my trying to forgive him, I learned some things about his childhood. And I learned that he had not been treated well either, and the things that had happened to him as a kid created sexual confusion. So he didn't really know what appropriate behavior was either. So he ended up acting his confusion out on my sister and I.
Okay, and you
Does
know,
that make sense?
I work with a lot of sex addicts that actually have that same kind of background. And it's interesting because one of the things that can happen to them, sex addicts who have experienced one of their parents acting out their sexual confusion, then the sex addicts can grow up and reenact that trauma on other people, you know, whether it be a young child, whether it be another child their age, whether it's another adult, they act that out. And so that doesn't make them bad. It just means they're confused and they don't know how to process that and recover from it. How'd you recover?
Thank God for A Course in Miracles as far as my healing part goes. The 12 steps are the foundation of my life. Everything has happened as a result of the 12 steps. But as far as my deep inner healing goes, it's happened through A Course in Miracles. And learning to forgive my dad, paramount in my life, and trying to apply the principle of forgiveness to everything in my life. But A Course in Miracles, I had to come to learn that there wasn't really that much difference in my dad and I. The actions are incredibly different. I would never do some of the things that my dad did, never. But the fear, the guilt, the anger, the confusion, all of that stuff that drove his actions, I got them all. I just didn't act on them the way he did. And so I had to look for the similarities in my father and I in order to be able to say, oh, man, it's just the grace of God that I'm not doing the same thing.
Well, and the Course in Miracles is a wonderful spirituality that helps you work through your feelings and work towards forgiveness and letting go and believing in faith and a positive power. How did you get turned on to the Course in Miracles?
That's a funny story, actually. I had a friend in the 12 steps that she was blowing my mind on a regular basis with her lackadaisical attitude about everything. And one day she had a roommate that had borrowed her car, took her car and got a little fender bender on it, came back and never told my friend that she had wrecked it. And then my friend found it, and she was so understanding and forgiving with this girl. I was angry. But she was understanding and forgiving. I'm like, how do you do that? And she said, I thought you would never ask. And then she took me to A Course in Miracles class. And in that class, there was a miracle happen, kind of almost like the same miracle that happened when I went to my first 12-step meeting, and I fell in love with the concept of A Course in Miracles immediately. And just like everything else I do, if I like it, I want more of it. So I dove into A Course in Miracles and my 12 steps, all 4 feet, and studied and studied and studied. And what I learned, A Course in Miracles is such a complement to the 12 steps. When I'm working with somebody or when I'm sponsoring somebody in the 12 steps, there's no way I can sponsor them and not also be teaching them A Course in Miracles, because the spiritual principles are totally in line with each other. There's no contradiction at all. But that's how I found the Course in Miracles, was through my friend's forgiving ways.
Well, and how did you find the 12 steps?
Well, I had one hell of a weekend, December 3rd, 1984, and I was married at the time, and in an attempt to keep my wife from leaving me because I knew I would die if she did, I told her I would get some help. I felt pretty safe. That was a bluff. I felt pretty safe in that, though, because I knew they were either going to want money or insurance or for me to have a job. I knew I didn't have any of those, so I kind of felt I was just making phone calls. But the lady on the other end at one point, my wife was sitting there beside me while I'm making all these phone calls, and the lady on the other end at one point said, well, I can't get you in treatment, but we do have meetings. And I said, you don't have meetings for guys like me, because I thought at that time my thing was all about the cocaine. And I did not know about Narcotics Anonymous. So she said, yeah, we got meetings for guys just like you. And I went to a meeting that night. That was December 3rd, 1984. And at that first meeting, I fell in love with the 12 steps and the people in it. Absolutely fell in love with it. If I had thought for 1 minute that I wasn't an addict, I would have come back and lied so I could fit in, because I loved what I found there.
Well, and it does sound like you have quite the addictive personality, and that can work against you or it can work for you. I mean, you fell in love with the 12-step program, and I work with so many sex addicts who they don't really believe they deserve the help and the support that a 12-step meeting can give them, so they fight it tooth and nail until at some point they learn the meaning of surrender. And when they learn surrender, they realize that's not giving in, it's really receiving.
Yes, and, you know, Carol, in all honesty, that was part of the miracle that happened for me at that first meeting, because everything else that I'd been introduced in my life to, I had looked for every reason in the world why it didn't work. And when you're looking for something, you're going to find it. So I always found reasons it didn't work. But after that first meeting, I looked for every reason in the world that it would work. And I do not know why. That was just part of the miracle for me. I looked for everything in my life that was evidence that I was addicted, evidence that I was powerless. I didn't try to fight it at all. I wanted it bad. So therefore, I looked for the reasons it would work, and that helped my faith to grow rapidly. And I was just blessed with the people that were put in my life to show me the way.
Yeah, that is amazing. And don't you think that possibly your own inner self, that kind of intuitive part of you, realized that in lots of ways the 12-step program offers you the same thing that a very secure, loving family of choice does. And you didn't grow up with that secure, loving family of choice. I mean, your whole childhood was chaotic.
Yes. That's putting it lightly, but yes. I have built in the 12 steps. Don't get me wrong, I love my family. I still have good contact with my family. But I have created a family within the program. The programs, because I go to several. There are kids in there that I have basically, they grew up with me around, and they call me Uncle Johnny, just like I'm their uncle. And one of them the other night picked up a year medallion, and he talked about how his Uncle Johnny and his dad had shown him the way because they had been living this program for so long. And that means so much to me. I have a family in the 12 steps. I've created it. I'm a part of it. I'm a family to them. But it's there for everybody if you want it.
Absolutely. Now, was it the 12 steps that helped you to forgive your dad? I mean, I clearly hear the Course in Miracles helped. But it was a combination of both, or was it solely the Course in Miracles?
It was a combination of both, because the thing is, I had been at a meeting one day, and I was, at one point, the older guys in the program were just, all I wanted to talk about was my childhood. Because I wanted to blame everything I was and everything I did on everything that happened when I was a kid, and these old guys just weren't buying it. And one day I walked out of a meeting, and this old guy said, he said, you really want to forgive your dad, son? And I said, yes, sir. He said, then you need to stop looking at your childhood and start looking at his for a little while. And that's when I started investigating my dad's childhood. And that's where I started finding empathy for him. When I started learning about what he had gone through, I was like, well, he didn't know anything else.
Yeah,
and the truth is,
it is the key to forming any kind of connection and relationship. When I'm working with sex addicts, I'm always asking them if they're in a relationship with their family, with their wives, with their husbands, with their kids. Empathy is a life skill that is imperative to learn. And so this wise person helped you to really start looking at things from your dad's perspective.
Yeah, and then I had this little things happened for me. I quit drinking and drugging initially in Florida, and things went crazy for me here in about 3 years, and I ended up having to move back to Kentucky, and things happened there, and I ended up having to live with my dad in the trailer we grew up in, or that I grew up in. We're all the same trailer, same furniture even, and it was a nightmare. And I was trying to learn how to forgive him, and I knew that was a reason. Somehow I knew that's why I was back in Kentucky. I even told my sponsor in Florida when he told me I was crazy for going back there, I said, I got to face my dragons where they live. And I went back. But this really beautiful thing happened one day. In the 12 steps, I don't care which ones they are, we talk about how when we come to the program, how selfish and self-centered we are. And all I wanted to look at was I didn't ever have a dad. I didn't have this. I didn't have that. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, one day I'm riding around, and I'm listening to country music, which is what I do, and this song comes on called Between the Lines, and this guy's talking about how his dad was trying to teach him how to drive, and at one point his dad said, don't worry, son, just keep it between the lines. The next verse, the boy is now a dad. He's watching his son color, and the kid asked him to help him color. He said, I don't know if I know how anymore, son. It's been a long time. And the kid says to the dad, don't worry, Dad, just keep it between the lines. The last verse, the father is on his knees praying to God. I don't know how to raise him now that his mother's gone. And God said, don't worry, son, just keep it between the lines. But in that moment, what happened for me, I realized I wasn't the only one that lost. My dad didn't get to be a dad any more than I didn't get to have one. So he lost as well as I did.
Well, absolutely. And most of our parents didn't have the role models they needed either. So
right.
It sounds like you were able to put all the pieces together, and that allowed you to forgive him for the wrongdoings. You got out of yourself, and you got into what it must have been like for him.
Yeah. And the other thing that most people don't understand about when they hear about my childhood and in it, one thing that I always knew that I never doubted, no matter how crazy he was or how bad some of the stuff was he was doing, I never doubted that my dad loved me. I never doubted that he loved me.
Well, that's
and
good.
I can't really explain that.
Well, I think, Johnny, from reading your book and also talking with you, I really believe people make decisions and look at life based on what their head tells them, in other words, what they think, what their heart says, in other words, what they feel, and what they intuitively know, what their gut says. And you seem very, very intuitive. I'm not saying you're not bright, and I'm not saying you're not emotional, but intuition has always been something that seems to have guided you, or you wouldn't have believed in the Course of Miracles like you did.
I absolutely believe that's right. And the thing is, I'm going to take a little sidetrack here and talk about the steps a little bit. I believe that our mind is like our office, and when it's cluttered up with our past, that we can't tap into our intuition. But as we do our step work and we clean up our past, in some of our readings it says we'll intuitively know how to handle situations which once baffled us. Well, if we clean up the past, that God is constantly talking to us. That's why it says in the 11th step to improve our conscious contact. It doesn't say to get a conscious contact. It says to improve, which means we must already have one. So by cleaning the past out of my mind, when God calls me with a little nudge as to where to go, I can actually hear it because my mind isn't cluttered up with my past. I can be in the moment enough that I can be intuitive. Now, is that what was going on when I got led to the other stuff? No, I also have some deeper spiritual beliefs as a result of being in A Course in Miracles that I think all play into that. And I don't know how far you want me to go with that, Carol, but they're all part of how I get to do what I do today.
Oh, I hear you. Now, I want to ask you a couple other things because I am always talking to my clients, whether they're addicts or not, but certainly my addicts, I say, and their partners. I say, you know what? Whatever you're feeling, I really want you to externalize that. I want you to get it out on paper. I want you to write about it. I just really feel like when people write, it's not for everybody, but when they externalize their thoughts and their feelings, it's powerful. And here you are, you're a man that wrote a book that didn't seem to go very far, and then you wrote a second book, and you were encouraged by probably an angel. This therapist psychic was an angel in your life and really encouraged you. What do you think it was about you that didn't give up after the first book?
Well, actually, if I get real honest there, I felt like I did give up because I hadn't written anything in, 20-some years when I wrote Dragons to Butterflies. I couldn't even write a poem anymore. I just couldn't make writing happen. And then when this guy that wrote, Chip St. Clair, who wrote The Butterfly Garden, told me to write, it was like all of a sudden I was given permission and to write the truth. And that's what I said. In 9 weeks, I wrote 22 chapters because once I started, I could not stop. I was up every night until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning because I simply could not write. But as far as the giving up, I felt like I had. I guess I hadn't, or we wouldn't be having this conversation as a result of Dragons to Butterflies. But I felt like I had.
All right. And so I get that, and for our listeners right now, there may be goals in your life that you feel like you've given up on too, and yet taking a break, taking a breather, saying you're not ready, you don't want it, you don't need it, whatever, doesn't mean that you can't start back. So for whatever reason, this book was captivating. The author really encouraged you, and you did a great job of following through. And I do believe that was intuitive. So Now, when you published this book, and, I told the listening audience that I met you at Hayhouse, and for anybody out there listening, Hayhouse is an amazing opportunity to get free radio that motivates you and inspires you, and then they publish books that are also motivational and inspirational. They're a dose of positivity anytime you need it. So what made you go with Hayhouse?
That was part of the divine intervention of things. As I said, I was up, almost every night writing until 4 o'clock, and one night I was basically punch drunk. I just couldn't write anymore, and I thought, well, I'm gonna look into the publishing aspect of this because I knew I didn't want to do what I had done before, because that guy that helped me self-publish Taming the Dragon just ended up taking me to the cleaners. So I'm on there, and because I'm familiar with Hayhouse, I see this. I Googled self-publishing, and one of the first ones that came up was Balboa Press, and the way they've got it on there, it says Balboa Press, a division of Hayhouse. And as soon as I saw Hayhouse, I'm like, well, I want to check that out, because I can't imagine any author writing things of a spiritual nature that wouldn't want to be a part of Hayhouse. So I go on there and I'm looking around, and what I did not realize, because I was punch drunk, is I submitted the first 6 chapters of my book to them that night. The next morning at 9 o'clock, Balboa Press was calling me, and the lady that called me, her name is Tina Colbert, and we have since become, even though we've never actually met, I'm going to say we've become friends. She called me and she said, Johnny, she said, if the rest of your book is like what I've just read, we want to work with you because I'm telling you, men do not tell this story. And men need to know it's okay to tell this story. That's pretty much exactly what she said to me. Now, at that time, I was struggling paying my rent, and the self-publishing package that she told me would be best for me, I was going to have to do a payment plan on. The payment for that were actually more than my rent, but I didn't even think about it. I just said, okay, sign me up. And she signed me up. I started making payments and making my rent. I started having fundraisers. People just showed up at my fundraisers. I did a thing at the comedy club. People showed up for that. I did a lot of barter work. The lady that edited my book for me, I put an air conditioner in for her. The guy that did my cover art for me, I put an air conditioner in for him. It's just everything's just kind of been there when I needed it. But that's how I ended up with Hayhouse. It was kind of it was like a divine thing, and I love them. Balboa Press has been so good for me. They've worked with me in every way. Anytime I needed to do something, they let me do payment plans, and they've just been incredible.
Well, and I got to tell you, I'm a little proud of this. I'm out of Indianapolis, Indiana, and Balboa Press is in Bloomington, Indiana, which is where my alma mater, Indiana University, is. And yes, I absolutely agree, and I know you have worked really hard to get this book out and have had fundraisers, and you were at the conference at your own expense, and I'm a published author too, and I know how tough that is. For everybody listening, I highly encourage you to get this book. It's called Dragons to Butterflies, The Metamorphosis of a Man, and it's by Johnnie Callloway. And, Johnny, I know that they can go to Amazon and get the book, or they can go to the website, dragonstobutterflies.com. Do you have a preference as to how people buy this book?
Well, no, I do not. Just bottom line, if they want a signed copy, they have to order it from the website because that comes straight to me. I can sign it before I mail it out to them.
And
if they get it from Amazon, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say,
if they get it from Amazon, I can't sign it.
Got it. For my listening audience, Dragons to Butterflies has the most amazing cover, and you've got even a story about how you got this cover. Do you want to share that with the listening audience?
It's just another one of those divine intervention things that's happened so many times with this book. I was about 6 or 8 chapters into the writing, and I like to when I'm writing, I like to have a cover that I can look at so I can say, okay, that's where I'm going. So I told a friend, I said, I think it's time I start looking for my somebody to do my cover art. And my friend that I was talking with said, well, what about Jeff? And I said, Jeff? He said, yeah, Jeff, dummy. I'm like, what Jeff do I know that does art? He said, the one that teaches graphic art and design at Ringling School of Art and Design. Oh, Jeff. So I called Jeff. I met with Jeff. I gave him the first 6 chapters, and that cover that you see that everybody loves is what he came back with.
Oh, my gosh.
And it was, and then, he said, we'll just work on this. And then after he had already done the cover, we were trying to figure out, he didn't know I did air conditioning work, and we were trying to figure out what I was going to do for him. And he told me, he said, well, I got to get back home because I got these air conditioning people coming by, and they've already told me they wanted like this astronomical number for putting him in an air conditioner. And I said, how about if I do that for you for the cover? He said, you do that? I said, that's all I've ever done is air conditioning. And so we did a barter.
That is amazing. And, here's what I want to assure, again, the listening audience, that when you work a program and when you follow the 12 steps and you work the principles, good things happen. and people show up in your life that are supposed to, and they help you, and you help them. And, Johnnie, I got to admit that you have learned how to receive. And that is as much a part of your work as giving back. Now, you are working on a new book, and I absolutely can't wait to read it. It is Within the Chrysalis. It's an inside job. So you're going to be talking more about the transformation that you've made?
Yeah, because, you know how many times have we heard in our recovery, if you've been around for a while, well, it's an inside job. Well, the transformation that really changes us is not a visible transformation. It's just like what happens with the caterpillar once it goes into the chrysalis. You don't see how that caterpillar turns into a butterfly. Well, you don't see how we do that either. So what I'm going to do and Within the Chrysalis is I'm going to tell about the perception shifts and how those perceptional shifts changed so that I could become a different person functioning in this world than the one that I was. And it's going to be about the work, the actual work that I had to do, more than just Dragons to Butterflies is like the story, and Within the Chrysalis is going to be more of like the how it happened.
Absolutely. So we will look forward to that, and you'll let me know when you get that done so I can interview you again. It sounds like you were meant to be a writer, and I'm sure you're a great heating and air conditioning guy. That's what my brother does, so it's near and dear to my heart. It's always nice to meet an honest heating and air guy. I know your healing process is not over, and I know that you're really working hard at giving back. I mean, that's what your writing is all about. For the people that I work with, the sex addicts that are in recovery, that want to turn their life around, that oftentimes have at least 1, 2, or 3 diagnoses. You know, a lot of the sex addicts I work with are either workaholics, or they're drug addicts, or they're alcoholics. Typically, you don't just have one addiction, you have at least 2, if not more. What would you share with them to give them some hope, strength, and recovery?
First thing I would say is don't ever give up on any of it. If you don't think you can find the right sponsor, he's out there. When you're ready, the right ones, he, she, they're out there. Just don't give up. That would be my first thing. The other thing is the miracle is in the 12 steps. If you don't ever do A Course in Miracles, that's one thing. If you don't ever do the 12 or work with the 12 steps, because that's the foundation of all of it. And get someone to guide you through the 12 steps and do the best you can to gather as much information as you can. And because there is a spiritual message in each one of those steps. It's not just, oh, I'm powerless, or, okay, now I believe. There's so much more to it than the surface. So look behind the surface, connect to the spirituality of the 12 steps, and let the world become open to you. I'm doing these classes now online where I get people to commit to me for 7 days, and I give them the foundation. Whether you're an addict or not, I give them the foundation of some spiritual principles they can live by. And the ones that are doing it now, I think there's 7 of them. And they absolutely love what they're learning with these classes. So if anybody wants to contact me through dragonstobutterflies@gmail.com and get set up and get started on doing those 7 classes, that would be great. Because what it is, it's a blend of the 12 steps in A Course in Miracles and all the other spiritual teachings I've gathered from Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle and all that. I'm an avid reader, and some of all of those are in these classes that I do. And it's just a good foundation to grow from.
That is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So now, before we end, there was one more thing that you talked about that I truly believe that anybody who listens to this show would want to know more about, because in actuality, you said to me that you had a crippling codependency. And that is one of those terms that's thrown around a lot in addiction. And I wondered how you felt that you were codependent, what you've done to work on that codependency, and how is it showing up in your life today?
Wow, that's loaded, Carol.
I know, it's 3 questions in one.
Yeah. My codependency always showed up in, like, if a pretty girl paid any attention to me at all, I would do anything for that girl. Anything. I always, looking back, I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I approached it just like I did the drugs, just like I did the alcohol, just like I did the gambling, the sex, everything else. She was going to be the thing that made me okay. If I could just make her happy. Now, because of my history with my mom, looking back, it was almost I was acting out. If I do it right, she won't leave. And if she doesn't leave, I'm going to be fine. That's what my codependency was.
Okay. Got it. And so that's what it was. How have you worked on healing from it? Because that's an ever-ending battle.
Well, what I do today, in all honesty, first off, I'm single, so that's not really an issue right now. But the thing that I believe today is I know where my power comes from today, and I know the woman's not going to make me okay. I know the right amount of drugs is not going to make me okay. I know that comes from within me. And I think I have experienced that enough now today that I don't have to do that again. But the bottom line is, in my mind, the 12 steps, A Course in Miracles, have all brought me to a place of being okay with me, loving me, trying. I believe the root of all of my addictions, Carol, codependency, all of them, is a deep-driven inner desire to self-sabotage. I believe that's the root of all of my addictions. And if I love myself enough that I can, and I'm aware enough of how I do that to myself, then I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to sabotage myself by giving my car and my house to some female. I've done that. It's like, oh, here, I don't need to drive. You drive.
And
I actually had a friend once tell me, give me the title to your car before you start dating somebody.
And so, there's something about that woman that helps to validate you externally, and you're finding out now that you don't need that anymore.
No, yeah, right. I don't need that anymore. And the validation, if it doesn't come from within, it doesn't matter if it's your sponsor. It doesn't matter if it's your therapist. Until I've had to learn in my recovery how to be as gentle and as kind with myself as I always was with my friends. I would never say to my friends the stuff that I used to say to me, and anymore, I don't say it to me either.
Fantastic.
There's a thing that I talk about in the book that is vital to me. Every day for about 5 years, and sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, I wrote letters from God to me. And those letters were always gentle and loving and kind and encouraging, and there was never anything in those letters that was demeaning or berating. It was all about me learning that God really does love me, and the end result was, through those letters, I learned to love myself.
Beautiful. All right, you've given us more hope, strength, and recovery, because there's a lot of people, both addicts and their partners, and just people in general, that feel like they're codependent and they want to work on that. Johnnie, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show, and I do want, once you get that 3rd book published, I want you to give us a call so we can have you on again. The best of success. This is hard work, and you just keep plugging away, and this book is absolutely excellent. I am talking to Johnnie Callloway, who wrote Dragons to Butterflies, The Metamorphosis of a Man. And you can get that on Amazon, or you can get a signed copy by going to dragonstobutterflies.com. So, Johnny, thank you so much for your words of wisdom.
Thank you, Carol. I'm so happy that I ran into you at I Can Do It, and we ended up getting to do this. It's just another one of those blessings.
It is, and I look forward to more of them with you in the future. So you just keep me posted, okay?
Okay, Carol. Thank you, and you have a good night.
Hey, you too.
Bye.
All right. That was Johnnie Callloway, and bye-bye. He is an amazing author, and this book is riveting. It's like looking at a drama. He doesn't hold anything back, and it's raw, it's understandable, and he knows that this is the way you get healthy, is that you look at your life and you become honest about it, and that's what I really appreciate about him. Very good book. Highly recommend it, and it really encourages people, like it should, to look at the 12-step process, and as we talked about before, the Course in Miracles. I bet many of you have not heard about that before, but A Course in Miracles is an amazing spiritual book. I've got it myself. It's huge. You do spiritual practice every day, and my friend and co-author, I wish you were my co-author, my friend and fellow author, Marianne Williamson, has done a lot of work around A Course in Miracles. So I can't say enough about that. Listen, I'm going to see you next week. I hope you get a chance to look at the website. I hope you get a chance to buy Johnny's book. And now I'm going to plug my book. All proceeds go to AFAR, which is the American Federation of Addiction Research. I don't make anything on this book. I actually paid to have this book published, and it's called Sexual Addiction, Wisdom from the Masters. It's my radio transcript of some of the most important people that I've interviewed, and it's an amazing compilation of expertise. Please go to my website, Sex Help with Carol the Coach, and either order the hardback copy. I'll have to send that to you personally, and I'll sign it, or you can go to Amazon and buy the ebook in Kindle or Apple form. All right, it's the end of the show, and as I say at the end of every show, there's only going to be one of you at all times. I want you to fearlessly have the courage to be yourself. I want you to really pay attention to nurturance and self-care, whether you're an addict, whether you're a partner, or whether you're a clinician working in this field. I love you, and I'll talk to you next week for more Sex Help with Carol the Coach.